the final tonight. And the best team in baseball wins it all in 2018.
For the first hit. Rutschman into right field. Down the line. A fair ball. Adley will turn first. Head for second. He's going to turn second. Go for third. Rutschman into third base standing. An extra base hit. His first hit in the major leagues. Welcome to the...
Those are long pitch innings, I think. Blister, that's what you wanted to make sure.
Here's a high fly ball into right. Back is Betts on the move. On the track. He's got catch by Mookie Betts.
Now, Clifford looking for a clean inning here in the seventh. Hit well out to right center field. Jones still on the move, running out of room, and he makes it.
And welcome back to Beyond the Ballpark. As always, I'm your host, Patrick Moran. We got a very awesome guest today. Michael Marcantonini will be joining the show. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time, and we are super excited to have you on today.
Thanks for having me, Pat. I'm really looking forward to being on the podcast, and I really appreciate you asking me to be on it.
Absolutely. So yeah, we just got a few topics for you that we can hit on. You're pretty versatile in the sports journalism game. But first, I think we'll just ask you the simple question before we get into those topics. What made you get into journalism, and what kind of put you on that path to be where you are today?
Pat, it really all started when I was about 10 years old, going to the play-by-play sports broadcasting camps. And of course, that's how we connected, camp that you've been going to and me working there. Kind of a full circle thing. Started there as a camper, working in the sports broadcasting industry, and have been able to pay it forward at the camps working there and meeting guys like you and, aspiring sports broadcasters. But when I went to the camp, that's when I got my first interest in sports broadcasting. I realized that it's something that people can do for a career, and you can work in sports in so many different ways. And just from there, I kept going back to the camp every summer for a week in the Philly area, and got more and more into it and realized that that's what I wanted to do. And I knew I never wanted to have a, I guess, quote unquote, real job where, you're sitting at a desk and working a 9 to 5 and wearing a suit and crunching numbers on spreadsheets and stuff. Like, that wasn't for me. I wanted to do something fun and exciting. And, I didn't know at the time that working in sports was going to be as challenging and sometimes as stressful as it is. But I knew it was going to be fun, and I love what I'm doing now. I'm passionate about what I do, and I'm thankful that I had that camp back in the day to go to, because that's what started it all.
Absolutely. That's a great story to hear. That can segue into our first topic, play-by-play camps. That's where we really got to, know each other better. First of all, what did you kind of get out of it? I mean, I know you saw both sides. You were a camper for a long time, and then you were a counselor. What kind of, lessons did you take away that you were able to carry with you as you went on to, baseball broadcasting opportunities?
That's a great question, because when I was going through the camps, and I think anybody that goes through the camps, it's for kids ages 10 to 18, you just don't see the world and see anything the way you will once you're in college, out of college, having worked for a few years. It's so different. So the things that I took away from the camp are a lot different than the things that maybe I preach to kids now, or at least prioritize. But one thing I knew is that I had to work hard. I mean, you can't be in this industry and work in sports without a really strong work ethic and working hard at everything you do, because there are so many people that want jobs in sports broadcasting, or even just sports media in general. And there's only so many jobs out there. So you really have to show that you want it. And, aside from that, you have to, one thing that I've always taken with me at every level, and I think a variation of it, it's changed in different variations over time. But one thing that has stuck with me is that you have to have the passion to do it too, because it's going to get tough. You're going to be working long hours, at times for low pay, in unfamiliar places, moving around the country. I've done all of that, but if you're still passionate about it, that's what keeps you going, and that's why you keep moving forward with it, and it helps you continue to move up. So I've always taken with me that, if you're passionate about it, keep going. If you lose that passion and decide that you want to pivot and do something else at some point in your life, that's okay too. But as long as you're still passionate about it, go for it, because you can always stop and do something else at some point in your career, but you can't say, you give up on the dream and then get back into it when you're 30 and 40. You can pivot to do something else when you're 30 and 40. So go after it. The same thing that a lot of people would tell somebody who wants to be a professional athlete. You can only play the game for so long. Go for it now. You can always do something later. So I've always taken that mindset with me.
That's a great mindset to have. Next up, what was your favorite location? I mean, obviously you're a Philly guy and you grew up going to the Philly camp, but you also you were a counselor in Maryland. Now that you kind of experienced both, what was kind of more enjoyable for you to be at?
That's a really good question too, because it kind of makes me think about, okay, the experience going as a camper, the experience working as a counselor, so many years apart. And again, perspectives change over time, and your life changes over time. But for me, I mean, I don't think anything replaces like the actual thrill of being a camper at those camps and going to the camps and being somebody in those seats, with people in the sports media industry or the sports industry up there talking to you about getting into the business or what it takes to do it, and doing all the activities at camp. Like nothing will ever replace the fun of that, and I guess like the wholesomeness and purity of that. So I'll always be grateful for that. I made so many great lifelong friends at the camps, and a lot of mentors as well. But I had a blast being a counselor, and I kind of did the counselor thing at the camps later in life. I mean, most people who come back as counselors, they do it while they're in college or maybe a couple of years out, just based off different things going on in my life, career-wise, personally. I came back as a counselor when I believe I was, 25 was my first year as a full-time counselor, and I did it for a few years. And so I was a little bit older, so I had a different perspective. So I really appreciated that and had a ton of fun, because for me, one thing that I really love is paying it forward and giving back to people that were in my situation at some point. Like I was a camper at those camps. So anybody who goes through those camps, I get what they're doing. Like I understand why they're there, what they're looking to get into, and what they're pursuing. Like I get it better than anybody. So the fact that I could pay it forward and teach broadcasting after learning it at those camps, that's really special. So that doesn't really answer your question. I think it's a 50-50 split of what I've enjoyed the most, but overall, I don't think anything can replace like the wholesomeness of being a camper at the camps.
Absolutely, that's a great answer. And, you had two different experiences. One you were a camper, one you were a counselor. So I get that. And last thing on play-by-play camps, you get to meet a lot of great, people in the industry and maybe even some athletes. Who was the coolest person that you met throughout play-by-play camps?
So many people that I could throw out for that answer. There's two that stand out, and both guys I met as a counselor, actually. One just from a fan and like just sports guy in general perspective, meeting Ryan Archidiakono at the Green Lane camp back in 2021. I want to say it was either 2021 or 2022, but that was incredible. And I'm from the Philly area. I grew up 25 minutes from Villanova's campus. My dad went to Villanova. I grew up a Nova fan, going to games when I was really young. Followed their entire run over the years where they were winning some championships and in Big East titles too. So meeting Archidiakono, my favorite Nova player ever, and a fellow Italian from the Philly area, that was really cool. I mean, that was just awesome. Got him to sign my jersey. I've got it hung up, in my bedroom at my parents' house. And the other one, from a career perspective, meeting Kevin Brown, the Orioles TV play-by-play broadcaster, when I was a counselor at the Baltimore camp in 2022, was awesome, because it was at a time in my life where I was going through some struggles personally, professionally. Things just were not breaking my way. And I talked to Kevin about it. I just needed somebody who was in the sports broadcasting industry to, kind of be there for me and listen to me and hear me out, and also kind of guide me through that tough time. And Kevin did that probably without even knowing it. Just a 10-15 minute conversation with him made such a difference for me. He told me about some struggles he had in his career, how he almost gave it up when he was calling games in the minors. Somebody basically told him, no, you're not quitting. You're not stopping doing this. You're gonna keep pushing forward. This is what you were meant to do. And he's a big league broadcaster, calling other games and other sports on ESPN, making a career out of it and making a living out of it. So hearing from him at that time, that particular time in my life, was huge for me. And I'll always be grateful for that. Even if Kevin wasn't necessarily trying to change somebody's life, in some ways he really did for me.
That's a great answer. I mean, I love Kevin Brown. Just hearing him on the call every night on Masson, and yeah, he's awesome. So that's gonna wrap up the play-by-play segment. Now we're gonna get into maybe a more fun topic for you. You are a Penn State guy, correct?
Yes, sir.
So we got some Penn State questions for you. During your time at Penn State, how do you feel like it prepped you there for journalism? Obviously, because Penn State's in a Power 5 conference in the Big Ten. I'm sure there were many opportunities. What were kind of some of the things that you did while you were a college student, just getting yourself into the sports journalism industry?
The opportunities I had at Penn State were incredible because when you're a college student, you're just looking for opportunities, reps, ways to get noticed, and ways to get experience in a bunch of different areas. And for me, I was able to do that. So, I mean, the biggest thing for me at Penn State that has gotten me to this point and really set me on the track to this point was working for the student radio station, the Lion 90.7 FM. And I will always hold that radio station close to my heart because, again, coming in at a time where I just needed opportunities and needed on-air reps, I got them right away, calling football games, basketball games, baseball games, doing sports talk radio shows multiple times a week, getting a feel for how to produce games and shows and do some behind-the-scenes stuff, some social media stuff as well, getting to go cover games on the road at different places. So all that, I got that experience there, and I made some of my lifelong best friends. So that was incredible, getting a chance to just do all of that. I also did a lot of stuff for the on camera, or what am I trying to say? The student TV club or station. I was a part of a show called Penn State Sports Night with PSN TV, and that got me a lot of on-camera reps, got me a lot of production and video editing reps as well. So between those two things, just some great opportunities. And you mentioned it, Penn State being such a big school, a Power 5 school, like it's high profile action all the time at all these different sports. It's not just football. I mean, it's D1 basketball, big time baseball, hockey, volleyball, soccer. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, Penn State, just the name itself, there's credibility and notoriety. And the fact that I got to cover so many big time sporting events really set me on a track to continue to do that as a professional outside of college.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll let you be a fan for a second. I know that Penn State is in the Big Ten championship this year for football. They are set to play the Oregon Ducks, who had an undefeated season. What's kind of your Penn State fandom looking like, while you were a student there, just going to games maybe as a fan and just being a fan now as an alum, you still get excited about the Natty Lions?
I do get excited. And it's definitely not on the level that I got excited and how amped up I was for every game when I was a student, because I mean, it's just hard to replicate being in State College, Happy Valley as a student, working in sports media, covering all these games, especially when they're good. I mean, you just can't replicate that. So I definitely followed it closer then. But I've paid attention a lot more this season just because, it's another season where they're ranked high, they're winning big games, they're going to the Big Ten championship for the first time since I was a senior, which was awesome. I had a chance to cover the Big Ten championship and the Rose Bowl my senior year. Incredible experiences and something I'll never forget. But yeah, man, I mean, being a fan, it's like you can't work in sports without being a fan. Like you have to be a fan first, and we all are growing up as sports fans getting into this industry. But I think nowadays in sports media, whether you're a broadcaster, a writer, or whatever, I think it's more acceptable to show your fandom in your work. It used to be you had to completely separate it. Now I like that you can show your roots as a fan, not showing bias towards anything, because you still have to separate that and be objective and all that, but you can show a little bit of your fandom, because that's what brings out the passion and the energy in your work, especially for me as a broadcaster. So getting to call Penn State football games and cover games as a student, it was awesome. I think in terms of just like in its purest form, like that may be the most fun I've ever had, because you're a student wrapped up in everything. Like it's your school, like you have that school pride, and you always will, but you do more as a student, and I did. So it's been cool over the years continuing to follow. I don't get to watch as many games as I used to, and I just don't follow it as closely. But the fan in me is always going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every sports fan can relate to that. Now we'll kind of broaden it up here for our last question on this section. Just being a Philadelphia sports fan, right? You got the Phillies, you got the Eagles, you got the 76ers, you got the Flyers. Philly's a pretty intensive, sports town and sports industry. And I've been to Philly, and obviously they take a lot of pride in that. What's kind of the Philly sports fan experience been like recently, and like maybe growing up, what were kind of the memories from that?
Yeah, overall, it's just tough being a Philly sports fan, man. I've dealt with so much heartbreak as a Philly sports fan in my life. Growing up, I just didn't have a whole lot of expectations. I mean, not just me. I mean, just Philly fans in general. Like we kind of grew up knowing not to expect a championship. I was born in 1995. I didn't see one of my teams win a championship until 2008. When I was in 8th grade, the Phillies won it all, which again, like, I think I'm pretty fortunate to have seen a championship by the time I was in 8th grade. But you've got people that were born up in the New England area who see a championship every year of their life, sometimes more, just with all those dynasties they've had in other parts of the country. But a lot of heartbreak for sure. But really, like, there's been a couple different periods of time throughout my life where all or most of the Philly sports teams have been good at the same time. And that's what's really exciting. I think having the Phillies and Eagles playing really well and being good teams, playoff teams that can compete for championships at the same time together is huge, because the city just goes nuts for both of those squads. They are the top two for sure, Eagles and Phillies. I mean, it's Eagles, then everybody else, but I'd say the Phillies are two. So the last couple of years have been really fun, getting a chance to see the Phillies go to the World Series, then go to the NLCS, to be in the playoffs, winning an NL East title again this year. And the Eagles, man, a chance to win their second Super Bowl since 2017 this year. I mean, the city's buzzing for sure. 9 straight wins. They're rolling. So when things are good in Philly, things are incredible as a fan. And the city, we celebrate hard for sure.
Yeah, and I saw that Phillies team recently, or the Eagles play the Ravens, and when it's right, they're hot. Jalen Hurts and Barkley rolling in that backfield, and it looks really good from an outside source. Now here are the heavy hitters. We'll go to the IronBirds first. You are the Aberdeen IronBirds play-by-play guy. That's been your main thing. We'll just kind of start with a simple question. What's kind of your game day prep every time you show up to the yard, or whether you're doing an away game? Like what are kind of the things you do leading up to a game?
Yeah, so I'm pretty particular about my routine. I'm not a superstitious guy. Like I don't have to do everything in a specific order and do the exact same thing every day leading up to a game. Like I'm not like that, but at the same time, I do have a routine that I like to follow, because I think it just puts me in the best position to call a game and call a game at the best of my ability by the end of the night. So, I mean, it's cool working in sports because you're often working afternoons and nights, which a lot of people don't like that. They want to work their 9 to 5 and come home and have the night to themselves. I personally, I'm not a morning person. I like to sleep in and, do stuff during the day. And then when I'm most alert and awake in the afternoon at night, that's when I really thrive. So I love the schedule of working in sports, especially baseball. So I'll sleep in till 8:30 or 9 on a game day. Let's say games at 7:05, which all our night games are. So I'll sleep into about 8:39. Take a little while to get going, have a good breakfast, hit the gym for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And that's a great way to start my day. Make sure I'm fueled up, get a good meal in, get a good workout in. Because, once I get to the ballpark, I'm going to spend 3 hours just sitting in a chair in a broadcast booth, not moving around. So I got to move around during the day. So that's how I start my day. But then after the gym, I come back and I'll kind of do a little bit of prep work at my place before going over to the ballpark. It depends on the day, what I'm doing, whether it's the beginning of a series, end of a series, big game. Whether I have guests on the broadcast, I'm doing an interview before the game that day. It all depends. So some combination of getting some notes from my game notes that I produce every day, or maybe writing interview questions, or just clipping some highlights to post on our team's social media account or my own social media for demo stuff. So it all varies, but that's probably, it could be an hour, it could be 2 hours of that. Get a good lunch in, just kind of rest up for the day, because once I'm getting to the ballpark, it's pretty much nonstop till the game's over. So then I get to the ballpark anywhere between like 1:30 and 3 o'clock for a night game, depending on what's needed from me. Does the team need me to do extra stuff? Do I have to come in early to get an interview? But either way, like once I get to the ballpark, we have a staff meeting at some point. I'm going through more broadcast prep, whether it's game notes, interview stuff, transcribing an interview that I recorded at some point so I can have talking points for the broadcast, doing some research to get some more notes for my scorebook, filling out my scorebook, going down to the field to talk to guys during batting practice, which is from 4 to 5 p.m. I'll usually hang out there for about a half hour, sometimes the whole BP. Just a matter of how much I want to talk to guys or if I need to get information. But that's all part of the prep too, is talking to guys and being around the guys and getting a feel for who they are as people and not just as athletes. Then I'm after BP, I'm doing a continuation of the prep stuff that I was doing before BP. Maybe we've got some videos that we've got to film for IronBirds social media, so we get stuff like that done. But then it's just final prep, fill out the scorebook, coordinate things with our production team up in the broadcast booth. If the visiting broadcaster is in town, talk to them. Make sure I get my dinner in and final prep for the game, and then I go on air about 6:55 for a 7 o'clock game, and through the end of the game, I'm on air. It's me, delivering the action to our audience, and get home 10:30 depending on the night, and then just kind of repeat after that.
Cool. Do you travel for away games sometimes, or you mostly just do it from Aberdeen?
Just do home games for the IronBirds.
Okay, gotcha.
Hoping at some point we can do the road games too, or see what happens. But just home games for now in Aberdeen.
Gotcha. I think I know some of the moments that you're going to mention here, but what's like a favorite moment you've seen from the press box, or like a favorite call you've had?
I mean, number one favorite call for sure is the walk-off, the Jackson Holiday hit during the summer of the 2023 season, when I used the Luke Combs lyrics from his song "Going, Going, Gone." I mean, that's unless I have another moment that can somehow top that, at least at the minor league level, I think that's going to be number one for a long time. And we're talking about walk-off, big game, big moment, big prospect. My favorite country singer using his lyrics in a big call, and then him seeing it the next day and saying it was the best home run call he's ever heard. I mean, it's so hard to top that. And what was tough about that moment, I mean, everything about that was great, but I'm thinking to myself, like, man, like, we just hit July. The season ends in September. Like, how am I going to top that the rest of the season? Like, if that's the peak of the season, like, that's a great peak to have. But I'm like, damn, like, there's no way I'm topping that the rest of the year. But that's easily number one. There are a lot of walk-off wins that were maybe equally as exciting, even though I didn't have a country music singer saying it was the best home run call he's ever heard. But we had some really big comeback wins over the last couple of years, that, games that most teams wouldn't have won. But for the IronBirds being such a resilient team, well coached, just a good culture around the organization, like, that's what led to some of those wins, and some of those will stand out. I mean, we had a game where The IronBirds were down 3 runs in the bottom of the 9th inning, 2 outs, nobody on base, and they won the game. I mean, that's always going to stand out because it's kind of speaks to everything I just talked about, the culture, guys playing for each other, grinding out wins. We had a walk-off win this past season during the 2024 season. Creed Willems hit an absolute moonshot of a walk-off homer, and I absolutely nailed the call. At least I felt like I did. It was one of the better calls that I've made in my career, and that was just exciting. You know, one of the guys that I've had a chance to talk to a ton the last couple of years, really get to know, somebody I consider a friend, and to see him have that moment, that was really cool. And also to deliver a big call for him and for everybody, you know, tuning into the broadcast at the time, that one was big. So those are ones that definitely stand out, but it's probably going to take getting to the big leagues to top the Jackson Holiday call.
Yeah, that's certainly a cool moment. Yeah, you mentioned Holiday, and obviously Jackson Holiday was a huge prospect back when he was ranked. He was the number 1 prospect, following in the shoes of Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson. What was that experience like in Aberdeen? I mean, you got the most time with him in, I believe, 2023, when he just skyrocketed through the minors. He hit all 4 levels, and he spent most of his time in Aberdeen. He played the most games there. So you had the longest look at him. What was that like? I mean, Jackson Holiday is arguably a generational talent.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, it was awesome because, yeah, like you said, of all the games he played at 4 different levels that year, he spent the most time with the IronBirds at High A. So I got a good look at him through 2 months, and I mean, he had some big games. You know, home run in his home debut, which was electric. Hit it to one of the deepest parts of the park, and it was a no doubter, like off the bat. Of course, the walk off tied in with the Luke Combs lyrics in the call. It's just some big games where he's racking up 3 hits, swiping bags, scoring runs, helmets flying off as he's rounding the bases. But it was just great to have him. He's a great kid. He's incredibly humble for as talented as he is. I mean, for a guy to get to the big leagues at 20 years old, and he's had his struggles, but to get to the big leagues at 20, like, you're just a generational talent and you're just incredible. But just really humble, easygoing, very calm personality and calm demeanor out on the field. Plays the game extremely hard. You can see it. He doesn't show a lot of emotion, but he plays the game hard, and he's just one of the guys for a guy who's been singled out his whole life as 7-time All-Star at the big leagues. His dad, his brother is going to be a number 1 pick as well. Kid who's always been the best on his team everywhere he's been. He's just one of the guys, and he fits in. So it was very cool. But I mean, I grew up a huge Matt Holliday fan. I mean, when I was in middle school and high school, that's when Matt Holliday was in his prime. So to then get to call games for his son a bunch of years later, just a really cool full circle thing. And but it was just great having Jackson. He's a great player, and I'm excited to see what he does. I think he's going to be really, really good at the big league level.
That's great to hear. I'm sure it makes you feel old too.
It definitely does. And another thing is, it's not the main thing because I just enjoyed getting to know him a little bit and calling his games, but everything he did, people wanted to know about. So the more time he spent with us, the more exposure I got from my broadcast and my broadcast clips and highlights circulating on social media, Twitter and Instagram. So that was huge for me. I mean, I'm very thankful that he is as big of a prospect and is so talented, because it drew so many more eyes and ears to my broadcast, and that has helped me continue to build a name for myself.
There you go, win-win scenario. This is kind of something that I've been on, since I kind of got in the prospecting like 1 or 2 years ago. Obviously the Orioles bats have been lauded for the ages over the past, year or two. They've had so many bats come up, like a Henderson, a Rutschman, a Holiday, even like a Kobe Mayo, Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad, guys like that, and even like a Samuel Basayo. The pitching is kind of trailing right now, but we've had some decent pitchers come up through the system, and it's kind of been building more so in the lower levels. What have you kind of seen out of the Orioles arms, and like where do you stand on that and where the Orioles pitching development lies? I know you saw a no-hitter too, so that must have been pretty cool, but I'm always kind of wondering what, or hoping that the Orioles can can move forward with the pitching development in general.
Yeah. Well, first, let me add, yeah, I'm glad you brought up the no-hitter. I wasn't even thinking along those lines. We were talking about big moments that I've had a
Mhm.
chance to call, and I'm thinking just offense, walk-offs, and all that. But, I mean, the no-hitter, it's right up there with the Jackson Holiday, Luke Combs walk-off call, because that was incredible. But right off the bat, I will tell you that the pitching talent in the Orioles organization is pretty underrated. And part of the reason it's underrated is because the top 30 prospect lists and the attention headline grabber guys are all
Or bats.
position players. And look, I get it. I mean, there's a reason that we're talking about legitimate superstar potential from some of the bats in the system. Some are already at the big league level, some are still in the minors. So that kind of overshadows the pitching, but there is a lot of talent, underrated talent. And I've noticed a couple trends the last few years in the Orioles organization with the pitching. Nobody goes deep into games in the minors, and it's like that in a lot of organizations, but there is a strong emphasis in the Orioles system on protecting arms and keeping guys healthy, which is the right thing to do, and it's going to lead to big league success moving forward. They're not letting guys go 150, 200 innings during a minor league season. Nobody needs to throw 7, 8 innings a game, especially early in the season. They're keeping hard pitch counts, hard innings counts, and making sure these guys stay healthy throughout a full season and that they stay fresh, because a lot of these guys are going to contribute at the big league level. Not all for the Orioles, but some will. I think most of the guys will for the Orioles. And when they get to the big leagues, you don't want so much wear and tear and so many miles on their arms. You want fresh arms that when they contribute the most, it's at the big league level and they do it at a high level. So there's a big emphasis on shorter outings, shorter pitch counts to keep guys fresh and healthy, which is huge. And also, you see a trend with what pitches guys are throwing. I mean, high velocity in any organization is paramount, but in the Orioles organization, it seems like everybody that comes out of the bullpen or, even guy in the starting rotations throwing 95 plus, and it's easy. It's easy arm action. The velocity is there. You see a lot of guys throwing not just fastballs, but cutters, which, again, a cut fastball, just to more hard stuff, but something that bites a little bit, has some movement, different direction, and can kind of, mess with hitters. And then slider sweeper combo. Everybody's throwing a slider or a sweeper. You got, a curveball is a great pitch if you can throw it effectively and bury it down in the zone. But there's less chance to hang a slider or a sweeper than a curveball over the middle of the zone and it gets blasted for a home run. So you're seeing an emphasis on the breaking balls that sweep across the zone away from hitters and low in the zone, as opposed to that looping curveball that may drop right in the zone. So those are definitely some trends that I've noticed.
Interesting. What's kind of some underrated talent you've seen, whether it's a bat or an arm? Because obviously it's very easy for really good players to get kind of lost in the scuffle in this Orioles system. Like, there's Connor Norby and Joey Ortiz who, they were always kind of lagging behind the bigger names, but they're still really good major leaguers. And even like a Kyle Stowers falls into that bucket as well. What guys have you kind of seen at the lower levels of the minors that, maybe they're not getting as much recognition as a top tier guy, but you think still has a lot of value and is a very talented player?
I could point to a lot of guys. I think we had just talked about pitching, so I'll start with arms.
Mhm.
A lot of the guys that were on our IronBirds squad during the 2023 season that have since moved on to Double-A Bowie, spent last year at Double-A, some are in Triple-A, some will start 2025 back in Bowie or in Triple-A, or maybe they're in another organization now. But there are a handful of future big league pitchers that were on that pitching staff. One guy that really stands out as underrated to me is Alex Pham. He's not small, but he's smaller and shorter than compared to like the stereotypical or prototypical pitcher that you would picture. He's not 6'2", 6'3", 250 pounds, smaller guy, but he has 5 pitches and he locates them really well. And I think anytime a guy has a 5-pitch mix and he can throw strikes, that's big time, because one, every organization wants a guy who can throw strikes, but the more pitches you throw, the harder you make it on hitters. So he's a guy that really jumps out at me. A guy who spent all of 2024 in Aberdeen with a Zach Fruit. He's another guy, 5-pitch pitcher, maybe a little bit older for a guy who was at high A this past year because he spent 5 years in college. But hey, look, if you can pitch, you can pitch. You know, it doesn't really matter how old you are, and he's still in his early 20s. But he's got some good stuff. He can touch triple digits, you know, in terms of topping out at highest velocity. And that 5-pitch mix is great. But a guy that just gets outs. You know, he started our combined no-hitter. So he's a guy that on any given night, yeah, he can have no-hit stuff for 5 or 6 innings, whatever it is. So I really like him. I got to shout out a trio of Philly guys that I've had a chance to get to know throughout the last couple of years. Kyle Verbitsky from the Philly area, spent parts of the last 2 years in Aberdeen. He's another Penn State guy. Shout out to the Nittany Lions. He's a guy who just flat out gets outs. He may not throw 97 or 98, but, you know, mid-90s, he can get outs. I think he's underrated. He was a piece in that Cole Irvin trade a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And Dan Hammer and Dylan Hyde, two strictly relief pitchers in the system. They both throw upper 90s, straight smoke from the right side. I think they have legitimate shots to compete at the big league level at some point. So ton of underrated talent in the organization. And then position player side, the guy that really stands out as definitely an underrated piece is Tavian Josenberger, switch hitter, guy who can play center field or corner outfield or middle infield, maybe second base more than shortstop, but a guy who can play some premium positions, excellent speed, probably the best base runner I've seen in Aberdeen other than Enrique Bradfield Jr. Not just
That's a gimme.
but running the bases. And yeah, just the fact that he's a switch hitter, bat to ball guy, doesn't strike out a lot. I think he's extremely underrated and valuable. And then, you know, maybe not underrated because everybody knows his name and he's a fan favorite, Creed Willems, but he's kind of blocked in this organization with Adley and Samuel Basayo ahead of him. But that dude can hit, and his defense is coming on strong. So I think he's still a little bit underrated just because of who's in front of him.
Yeah, absolutely. Some great answers there. You know, obviously this Orioles system was at a point where it was getting beefed up as much as it possibly could, you know, when the Orioles are kind of in the weeds of the rebuild. But you're kind of in an era of Orioles baseball where, you know, the farm system's been built up and they're pulling from it to get big league talent. And, you know, we saw that this past season. How did it feel seeing some guys getting traded away? You know, we saw the Zach Eflin deal. There was a lot of, you know, lower level guys, you know, like a Mac Horvath and Matthew Etzel and players like that, and a Jackson Bowmeister. Like, that has to be really weird to see just, you know, players that you saw in the first half of the season and maybe you even liked, and then all of a sudden they're just gone.
Yeah, it's incredibly tough. I mean, that Zach Eflin trade, Mike Elias traded away 3 of my friends. I'm like, dude, really? Like, I get it, maybe one guy, but like 3 in one deal. I remember getting a notification that the Orioles had traded for Zach Eflin for 3 minor leaguers last year, and I'm like, all right, like I'm wondering who's in that return. I got to imagine there's at least one guy off the IronBirds roster because that we knew going into the year that there was going to be a lot of pieces traded off that team just based off how the system was lining up, what the Orioles were going to do at the big league level. And then a couple minutes later, I see the Jeff Passan tweet and I read Jackson Baumeister, Mac Horvath, Matthew Etzel. And I was just like jaw dropped. I'm like, all 3 guys, my guys from Aberdeen. So that was tough because, you know, you get to know these guys as people and you build friendships with them. But again, Moises Chase, a guy that I really liked and had a chance to talk to, practice my Spanish with when I was talking to him throughout the season. He got traded to the Phillies right at the deadline. And so it was tough to see guys like that go, leaving our roster, you know, knowing that they're good players and, you know, they'd help us win games. But great opportunities seeing them move on. But yeah, I mean, it's just the reality of it. It's going to continue to happen. The Orioles are going to be a perennial contender moving forward. They have a deep farm system. To win at the big league level, you need guys that are ready now and big league superstars. So there are going to be some more trades throughout the next couple seasons where they're trading my friends away again. You know, my friends are going to be going to other organizations, but I know it's part of it. And it's almost like a win-win. The Orioles get better at the big league level, which is what it's all about. And guys at the minor league level who may be blocked in this organization who I want to see just do well wherever they go in their careers, they get an opportunity in a different organization, and maybe it's a better opportunity for them.
Absolutely, you make a great point. Like you look at a guy like Matt Horvath, and he was kind of another Connor Norby type, where he could play these different positions, and they were trying to find a spot for him, and just no matter what you did, he was still kind of blocked. You obviously, I think, run a show, right? You kind of run a podcast, I think, and you get to interview players at Aberdeen. Who's been like the nicest interview you've had?
Yeah, so you're talking about my all mic'd up interview series with players,
Yeah.
on camera interview series, essentially like a video podcast, I guess you could call it that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've been doing that the last couple of years. It's been a lot of fun. The nicest player that I've interviewed, I mean, I got to go back to Kyle Verbitsky. In
Mm.
terms of all the guys that I've met working in professional baseball, Kyle is easily one of the top 2 nicest that I've ever met in this game. I mean, even outside of baseball, like one of the top 2 nicest people I've ever met. He's just an incredible guy. He's always willing to give his time for an interview, and just insightful answers, authentic answers. Like that's who he is as a person, and that's what comes off in the interviews. But by far the nicest. And I've interviewed a lot of incredibly fun, friendly dudes. I mean, nobody's been there's never been any negatives with the interviews I've done. Everyone's always willing to do it, happy to do it. But Kyle Verbitsky, shout out Verb, he's the man.
That's awesome. And then just kind of to wrap, although it's probably a better starting question, how did you end up in Aberdeen, and what are some of your goals for the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a long story of how I ended up in Aberdeen, and it kind of starts a few years prior. Long story short, I filled in on an IronBirds broadcast during the 2018 season when they were the short season affiliate, and I was calling games for the York Revolution, about an hour away in Pennsylvania. Somehow they reached out. Through the channels of communication, it got back to me that they needed somebody to fill in for a game. I ended up doing it, and from there I met the people that I now work with on a daily basis there, and have the last few years. Our GM Jack Graham, Kevin Jimenez, our creative services director, and just kind of kept the lines of communication with them going over the next few years. And eventually it got to a point in 2022, at a time when things could not have been worse for me in my career. Things were just not going well. I needed a break, and this was my break. I was available. They were looking for somebody to come in and take over as the broadcaster. They knew who I was. They knew how I sounded on air, and it worked out. They brought me on. I've been there ever since. So it wasn't like this formal application process where I'm sending in my resume and a cover letter and we're doing an interview and then they offer me the job. It was, they knew who I was, just, based off good timing and me putting myself out there, reconnecting and keeping communication going over a few years, post COVID. And it worked out timing wise. I got a break to be there, and I've been there ever since, and I'm running with it. So just a really awesome opportunity. And I've loved every minute of it.
Absolutely, that's great stuff. That's a great story. And now finally our final topic, the Arizona Fall League. You got polo on today. It's looking very nice. We'll start with this. How did you get that opportunity to go out to the Arizona Fall League? I mean, it's probably easier for you because you're a lower level commentator in the minor leagues, but how did you kind of stumble into that opportunity, and kind of what made you say yes?
I knew about the Fall League for a couple years, and last winter, I'd say it was last January, is when I initially reached out to the guys who run the Fall League, and I reached out about going out there to broadcast. Ended up getting on a Zoom call, talking about potential opportunities, what an opportunity would look like. And then I, didn't hear anything again until August about the opportunity. So I didn't know if it was going to happen. I wasn't expecting it to happen. But they reached out again in August, offered me an opportunity to go out and broadcast. But then a few days later, they came back and offered me the opportunity to still come out and broadcast, but also work as a communications coordinator for the league and basically handle all the written communications work for the league and broadcast games and kind of do it all. And that was awesome. I was thrilled about that. It was just a better opportunity than just going out to broadcast, getting to do all of this stuff as well, more work to add to my portfolio, and just on my resume, chance to meet and network with MLB people, MLB employees, media, MLB network people, on-air talent, all that, meet more players, just be hands-on doing everything every day for the league, which was great. So I think it's a theme of something I've talked about, with the IronBird stuff, and even before, is, you just need timing to work out in your favor a lot. And you have to continue to build off of connections that you make, and just continue to put yourself out there and put yourself in a position to be in front of people that can help you. And that's kind of what it was with me, is reaching out really early about the opportunity, getting face-to-face over a Zoom call with the guys who run the league. And then just, throughout the minor league season, being able to put out more work that they were able to see. And they're like, okay, this kid's good. We want to bring him out here. So it all ties together. And just very thankful and very grateful that I had the opportunity to work in the fall league and do all that. Because like I told you, off air before we started the podcast, best career experience for me so far is what I got to broadcast a bunch of games. I'm on MLB.com calling games. Got to broadcast the AFL Home Run Derby, the play-in semifinal playoff game. Putting out press releases and game notes that go on MLB.com and the Fall League website. Press releases getting distributed with the MLB letterhead at the top and my name on the bottom, going out to so many people. Just a really cool experience, and I'm proud of myself, and I'm proud of the work that I did.
Absolutely. This is, that's a great experience to have, and it's definitely unique. So what were, being a commentator, what were kind of some of your takeaways from players in general, or maybe Orioles that you were kind of tracking with an extra edge because you kind of knew some of them? We mentioned that Creed Willems was out there, and Doogie Hodo as well, who I'm sure you've seen in Aberdeen. What did you kind of see out of all the prospects out there? And I can't help but mention this guy, Josue Briseño, just kind of a gun show for him. So yeah, what did you kind of see from the guys out there that maybe you're trying to build some momentum for next year?
First thing that jumps out was how talented the guys out there were. And every year there's so much talent. I mean, it's not just the guys that are on big prospect lists, high draft picks, big time signings. There's a lot of under the radar talent out there as well. But I saw a ton of talent, a lot of future big leaguers, and just getting a chance to see players from other organizations and get a feel for their backgrounds and their careers and their goals. It was very cool because, working in minor league baseball, you work for one team, and, basically everything you do is centered around that team. You don't get to interact or find out that much about guys from other teams, way less than your own team. So going out there, I got to learn about guys and meet guys from 30 different organizations, and, just see them compete against top talent every day. And it was fun. You mentioned Josue Briseño, first Triple Crown winner in the history of the AFL. I mean, what he did with the bat was ridiculous. He led the league in 8 separate offensive categories. No doubt a future big leaguer, but the guy came to the league and he hadn't played above low A, and he just tore it up. One of the best seasons that anyone's ever seen in the fall league. Jack Caglione was the highest ranked prospect in the league, number 6 overall pick. This past summer, Nick Kurtz, the number 4 overall pick. Seeing those guys do their thing. 2 guys with insane power, future big leaguers sooner rather than later. That was fun. Seeing Andrew Painter from my hometown Phillies organization get back on the mound and pitch for the first time in almost 2 years. That was really cool to see and call his games. And then the Orioles guys, getting to not just call their games and follow what they're doing, but get to know them better and grow our friendships. Creed Willems, Doug Hodo, and Jake Cunningham, the 3 position players that the Orioles sent out there, spent a lot of time talking to those guys. Roberto Mercado, the manager of the Surprise Saguaros out there, who was with me in Aberdeen, now in Bowie. He's the man. Not just a good friend, but he's a role model for me in baseball. Like, I look up to him because of who he is as a person and how he manages not just baseball players, but people and his people skills. So getting a chance to talk more with him and see him for the first time in over a year was awesome. Just a really special experience. And I will always be grateful for getting a chance to connect with so many different people out there.
That's great. You mentioned some of the 2024 draftees, like a Nick Kurtz, like a Jack Caglione, who went out there. What are kind of your thoughts on that? Players who were drafted just a few months ago, then quickly turning around after a long college season to go into minor league ball, and then they go into the AFL. Like that's a lot of baseball for even a professional athlete. Like it was really interesting to see. And you also mentioned Andrew Painter, who was rehabbing. Those all three of those guys are kind of in unique scenarios and unique situations. What are kind of your thoughts on that with those guys?
It was really cool to see those guys out there, especially the guys that just got drafted this year. I mean, you don't see that all the time. You especially don't see it for guys that just got drafted that are also extremely high prospects that could be in the big leagues soon. But especially on a position player side, hey, go get at bats. It's a lot different for pitchers. You got to be a little bit more careful with them. But for Cags and Kurtz and other guys, like, hey, just keep swinging the bat, get some more reps. And but it's definitely unique seeing them go from playing college ball to then jumping right into minor league ball, moving up maybe a level or two, depending on how quickly the orgs are moving them, and then go play more baseball in the fall league. But Jack Caglione might be in the big leagues next year. That's how good he is, especially as a hitter. Who knows if they're going to let him pitch long term or if that's in the plans, but he's going to be a big league position player, I think, at some point during the 2025 season. I mean, I'm not saying it's 100%. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not going off any information. I think he gets up to KC at some point next year, but that he is one of the biggest baseball players I've ever met. I mean, I've covered, NFL training camps before with an internship that I had in the past, and nothing beats, seeing an NFL lineman up close. I mean, those guys are ridiculous, but in terms of like baseball players, like size wise, Cags is as big of a guy as I've seen working in pro ball, but that dude's got some insane power. Like anytime he swings a bat, the ball's got a chance to leave the yard. So seeing big time prospects like that was extremely cool.
So yeah, you did the Arizona Fall League, and you also called games in Australia. So, you've kind of had the two experiences of broadcasting in the MLB offseason. What would you kind of say when you compare the two experiences that you've had, and which one maybe liked better?
The best way that I can describe it, I was just talking to somebody about this recently. Going to Australia and getting that experience out there, best life experience that I've had. The Arizona Fall League, a great life experience as well, but that's the best career experience that I've had. That's where I'd separate them. The baseball and just the position that I was working in and the credibility that came with it, and also the exposure. Arizona Fall League for sure in all of those areas, tops Australia. But getting to live in Australia for 5 months and call baseball games and go explore a new country, getting to check out new beaches, see new wildlife, make new friends, exploring new cities. I will never be able to replicate that experience. So that's how I differentiate the two, but definitely the two coolest life and career experiences combined that I've had.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's all we got. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was awesome to have you on, and this was a very long conversation, but I had a lot of fun. So thank you so much for coming on Beyond the Ballpark, and you're always welcome on again.
Yeah, you're welcome, Pat. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time. Happy to do it. Happy to come on again anytime. And it's always awesome seeing guys that I've worked with at the play-by-play camps. I just straight up do it. And what I mean by that is you're going to the camp, learning about sports broadcasting, but you guys are actually doing it. You've got your own podcast, or you're streaming stuff, going live on different social media channels. You're writing articles, calling games at your high schools and all that. So it's awesome seeing you and so many other guys do that. And I'm always happy to pay it forward and be a mentor and be a friend for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So with that, we'll let you go, and good luck in the rest of your career.
Thanks, man. We'll talk soon, Pat.
Yep. See ya.